So what we're going to do today is going to be pretty straightforward. All that we're going to do is, assuming that you already have a headset that can play Horizon Worlds, assuming that you have Horizon Worlds downloaded and updated, I'm going to let you take care of the downloads and the updates. It's pretty straightforward if you look at the menu. So once you have those two things, the next step is, how do you actually start building? How do you get to a place where you can create whatever you want with whatever you want? So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to take you into Horizon Worlds. I'm going to show you how to get into build mode, and we're going to start playing around with some of the common mechanics that are going to help you be successful as you start your building. Come along with me. All right, welcome. So the first thing that we're going to do today is going to be, we're going to open up Horizon Worlds, okay? We're going to open it up and we're going to go into build mode. So to start off with, you want to click the Oculus button on your right controller. This little button right here. You can see it in the headset. It feels a little different when you actually touch it with your thumb. So hit the Oculus button on your right controller, and it's going to bring up this little Oculus menu down here. All right, so what we're looking for, I have Horizon Worlds as my most recent application that I've used, but if you don't have it down here, you're going to want to click on this little waffle button here for the app library. It's called a waffle because it sort of looks like you put some buttons in a waffle maker, I guess. So we'll open up the app library. And here's where you're going to look around and see, okay, where can I find Meta's Horizon Worlds? So there's a couple apps in here, but we're looking for Meta's Horizon Worlds. Okay, so we're in our app library, and we hit the right trigger to select Open. And Horizon Worlds starts. This is going to be your common loading screen. When you see this typically means that you're transitioning in between worlds, either your home world and a world that you've made, or a world that you're visiting. It also happens to be sort of the locale of this new home space island that you're on. So welcome, everyone. We're now in Horizon Worlds. It actually looks pretty similar to the main menu that we just were, but it's a little bit different. The home space here is a little more engaging. It's a little more fun to look at. And yeah, let's get started. All right, so here we are. We're in our home island. You look around, you see there's this background that's dynamic. It's got some things flying around. It's got some birds. Welcome board with some updates and all of that. Yeah, it's quite peaceful. Some weird stuff going on with some visuals over there. But overall, it's calm and quiet. So, what are we here for? We're here to build. So how do we do that? So we're within Horizon Worlds now. If you're interested in accessing the Horizon Worlds menu as compared to the Oculus menu, the Horizon Worlds menu is going to be the Oculus button that's on your left hand. So we use the right button, the right Oculus button, to bring up the Oculus menu, the Meta menu, right? So this is going to be sort of our operating system, sort of like our Windows. With our left controller, we hit the Oculus button, and it brings up the Horizon Worlds menu. Okay, so this is where you navigate and do all of that stuff in Horizon Worlds. Notice when you first press it, it brings up sort of the highlighted worlds. These are the worlds that people have made that have been considered the most engaging or the most fun or the most interesting. Okay, this is ultimately where you're going to be. Or maybe not, but, you know, that's kind of what we're going for. We want to create engaging experiences that people are going to have fun playing. Either with each other or with their friends or even just by themselves. Okay? So you can feel free to play around, hop in, see what sort of things people have done. There's some really cool stuff people have done. But what we're here for is we're here to create our own stuff, okay? So we're here, we're on the main menu, and you'll notice down here at the bottom there's a couple of different options. You've got settings, which I can address in a later video. You've got notifications, which I'm all caught up and I don't really have those. Over here, this first one is going to be worlds. So this is where you come and learn about new worlds and worlds you might want to visit. These two people here, this brings up your friends or people that you've accessed or ran into just relatively recently. And then finally, this is the create menu. So this is where you're going to go when you start Horizon Worlds and you want to build. This is where you come. Okay? So just to reiterate, we start up Horizon Worlds. We're here in this awesome, relaxing, serene environment. And we hit the left Oculus button, and it brings up the Horizon Worlds menu. We go down here to this little square and circle, and we click on it with our trigger, and it brings up our creations. So notice here, I've got a number of different creations that I've made. Each one of these is its own separate world. Notice that up here at the top, you can choose between invites. So if you've been invited to collaborate on something, which probably at this point you haven't, but that doesn't mean at some point in the future you won't. You've got tutorials. So there are a couple different tutorials that you can take. This intro to creation is where I started, and it's sort of just get you started with building things. Honestly, sort of what I'm doing here. And then creations is really where you're going to live. So, let's see here. I've honestly not played around too much with these. This is just a way to filter through what worlds you have. You can create a new event, which I've not done. But what we're interested in is this new world. Okay? So, reiterate again. Horizon Worlds menu, serene, fun, hit the left Oculus button, bring up build menu, and go to new world. So when you're here, there's a couple of different environments you can choose from. I'm going to recommend that we start with blank. Hopefully you'll come back and do this enough times that you can play around with all the different options that we have here. But for right now, I want to start simple. Okay? So we're going to start with a blank world. So we're going to click on this and notice that we can create a name for this. So we're going to delete this and we're going to call this my first world. My first world. And hit create. And it should automatically load you into the screen that you wait while you hop over into build mode for my first world. All right, welcome. We're in build mode of my first world. Let's look around a second. What do we see? Well, first thing is we don't see anything. There's nothing here. Okay? Let's take a look around and see if there's anything we notice about us. Okay, there's a little... Looks like something with this controller here. If I press down, it looks like a guy with a wrench. We'll deal with that in a second. What are some other things we notice? Well, right now, what we see is we can move around. We can jump. It's almost like we're actually playing a game right now. And this is one of the coolest things about Horizon Worlds. Is that build mode is set up that you can pretty immediately hop right into play mode to see how it works. Now, how video games have been created in the past, and granted, there's been a lot of updates to this, but in the past, it wasn't that easy to make updates to whatever it is you're building and then to hop in and see if it works, see if it's fun. You'd have to build it and then compile it, and it'd have to go through all these steps to then, a week down the road for you to get to try it. And then what if it's not fun and you got to go through the whole process again? So this right here is one of the strengths, it's one of the benefits, and one of the absolute most fun parts of Horizon Worlds is this ability for fast iteration. And what that means is you get to build something, you get to try it out. If it's fun, you can leave it. If it's not, you immediately hop back and change it and try it again. This is something that there's not a lot of other things out there like this right now, right? Think about it. If you're building a Lego set, you build something and you're like, oh, that doesn't really look that cool, so I'm going to take it apart and build it a little bit differently. And then, oh, that actually does look cool. So that's what we're doing here. Right now, this is in play mode in build mode. And what this means is I can build a whole bunch of stuff, which we'll get to in a minute, but I can immediately hop in and try it out. I can immediately see what the game is like. I don't have to go through, all these series of tests or send it off to another team to get it compiled or ready. I just hop in and play. And anyone can do this. All right. So now that we've talked a little bit about, one of the strengths, which is this, ability for fast iteration to hop in and make changes on the fly and see how they play. Now we're going to actually start building. Okay. So by default, you come into build mode and you start in this play mode, which is you just, run around. Now, one of the things I want to focus on today is getting used to hopping in between build mode and play mode, because this is going to be one of the strengths of the platform of Horizon Worlds, and you mastering this will only make you better at building. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, I mentioned if you look on our right stick, looks like if we press down, we should, hint, it's a builder. It tells you how to go into build mode. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a couple of times of going into build mode, hopping back into play mode, and doing that. And this is something, honestly, if you find yourself like, coding or thinking or building and you just have a quick second to stop and think, don't be afraid to try this out and get used to it, because this is going to be one of the mechanics that you do all the time, is switching in between build mode and play mode. Okay, so we're going to go to build mode. So on our right stick, we just pull down on the stick. And here we are. We're in build mode. Notice it looks pretty similar to where we just were, except for we seem to be up in the sky a little bit. And we now have two different hand things, which I'll go through. But one of the things you'll notice is here on the left hand thing, if we press up on the stick, there's this little running man. What this does is this takes us back into play mode. So this is what we're going to do a couple of times. Remember, if you're in build mode, which is where we're at now, and you press up on the left stick, you go to play mode. Up on the left stick, and you're in play mode. If you're in play mode and you click down on the right stick, you go back to build mode. So try that a couple of times here. If you're in build mode and you press up on the left stick, you go to preview mode. If you're in preview mode and you press down on the right stick, you go to build mode. Now you'll notice if you're in build mode and you hit down on the right stick, something happens, but not what you would expect. We'll get to that later. But just realize, in what I'm trying to get across here, is that the different modes are going to have different options that you can play around with. Okay, so hopping into preview mode, up on the left stick, we can run around. And notice really the only things that you can do with your controller are hop into build mode. So when you're in preview mode, the only thing you can really do menu-wise is hop back into build mode. Okay, so hop into build mode, and then you'll see there's a whole bunch of other options, which we'll get to. But this is where I wanted to start with today, is just get used to coming into an area, When you're in here, when you start off building, you're going to be in preview mode, which allows you to run around and see what the game actually plays like. When you're in preview mode, if you hit down on the left stick, you join into build mode. And this is going to be where you actually build everything that you interact with. Okay? So this is where I wanted to start today. Feel free to hop in and play around with this, start your own instance, and then play around a little bit with hopping into preview mode, running around, seeing what you have, and then hopping back into build mode. And then when you're in build mode, I'll recommend playing around. I'll go a little bit more into depth with this in the next video, but feel free to play around. What you end up having in build mode is you end up being, and if there was another person in here, I could really show you what I mean. But in build mode, you end up being almost this god character where you're up on top, looking down on this creation that you're building. And so you can see here, and we'll see as we continue on, how this becomes almost like, building a Lego set or building a train set where you get to design everything. You get to design everything you want here. And then you can hop into preview mode and interact with it. And that's really fun. And you get to build whatever you want. Okay, so that's that. Next video, I'll go over a little bit more about what all we can do in build mode. I'll hop in and start playing around with actually using some shapes to build things. We're going to start off pretty simple, but everything that we go over is intended to be sort of a beginning point for everything that comes after this. One of the cool things about everything that we're learning here is a lot of this is nested information. Stuff that we're doing here at the very beginning is going to be related to stuff that we do a little bit later when it's a little more complicated. So that's that. So start off with this, how to hop into build mode. And that's that. So right now, as I mentioned, there's not actually much of anything here. And actually, before we end, let's do this. I'll go ahead and just start off a little bit to whet your appetite for next time. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to give you the tools to build the structure of a house. It's not going to be dynamic or interactive or anything, but you can build the structure. Okay, so we're in build mode, and we want to build a house. So there's a couple ways to do that. There are some pre-made houses we could get. We just want to start off with something simple, 4 walls and a roof. Okay, so we're in build mode. As I mentioned, the controllers have a little bit of some different opportunities here. But one thing that you'll keep in mind, similar to when we were out in the Horizon Worlds menu, is that when you're in build mode, the left Oculus button brings up the build menu. Okay, the right button is always going to bring up the headset's menu. That's not really what we're interested in. When we're in Horizon Worlds, we're interested in the Horizon Worlds menu. So we're in build mode, and we hit the left Oculus button, and it brings up this menu. Now notice there's a bunch of different things here. We've got some different shapes. We've got some gizmos, sounds, assets. This will all be covered in a later video. But what I'm going to start off with today is I want to build a house. So I'm going to start off with in shapes. If you point your cursor at the shape and you click the trigger and hold it down, it creates this. Okay, so this is a primitive shape. It's a cube. Notice it is a white cube. Okay, so one thing we can notice is we can put our cursor in it, and if we click down on it, we can drag it around, right? So we can put it wherever. We can put it on top of this guy. We can put it in front of this guy. So one of the things we'll point out is go into preview mode. There's now a box here, right? And you can't jump on it because it's a little bit too tall, but it's a box here that you can run into. So you can see how if you have enough of these, right, that you could build a house with them. One of the cool things you can do, this is a square here, right, but it doesn't have to be a square. What you want to do is we want to select it. There's a couple different ways to select it. You can put your cursor into the object and click down, and notice it is now highlighted in blue. That means it's selected. Another way is You click your cursor outside of the object and hold it down. So click the right trigger and hold it down, and then you drag it through. And notice that that also highlights it, and it's highlighted in blue. Now, what do we do with this? There's a couple things we can do. One thing you'll notice immediately is these little arrows that point off to the sides. If you click this actual top little arrow, notice this green arrow. If you click and hold on to it, it allows you to move that object in one specific direction, right? Straight up and straight down. Notice it doesn't do anything left and right. It's just straight up and straight down. Now, if you want to go left and right or forward and backwards, you can see there are these other ones that are attached to it as well, right? So you've got, these different directions that you can push it. So that's what these arrows do. If you want to make it smaller or bigger, you can grab it, and with the other one, click it, and you can make it a lot smaller, or you can make it a lot bigger. You can kind of do whatever you want, right? So just in general, this is really fun to do. Just come in and play around with some shapes and get used to using your hands in this environment and, grabbing with two hands. Now, I mentioned I'm interested in making a house, so we need some walls. So I mentioned with this arrow, it kind of moves it. This square, if you click and hold this, it allows you to resize. So in this case, we're making this a lot smaller, a lot bigger. I want something that's about the size of a wall, so we'll just do something like this. Okay. So now it's kind of thin. Maybe we want it a little bit wider, so we're going to click and drag on this square to make this a little bit wider. Okay. So there we go. We now have what we can ultimately use as a wall. And notice you can go put it here, and we hop into preview mode, and now here's a wall. It's not super interesting. However, you can see as a designer how you can use something like physical objects like a wall to prevent players from getting into an area, right? Maybe this wall is here and there's a door that you have to find a key for, right? So this is a way to use physical objects to sort of enable your game or world environment. Okay, so now we figured out how to resize. The last two things I'm going to talk about are snapping and duplicating. So what snapping is notice that as we're playing around with this wall here, we can put this anywhere, but there's not like a great way to make sure it's completely flat, right? Like here, it seems like it's kind of flat, but then we come over here and we look and see, oh, it's actually not entirely touching the ground. So touch the ground here. And then in this case, that looks kind of good, but it looks like it's clipping into the ground a little bit. So it's sort of a free-for-all. However, when you're in build mode, notice on your left stick that we have the pressing up on the left stick is going to take us to preview mode. Pressing down has this little magnet, and this is called snap mode. So we're going to click on that, and what this does is you notice it has these little anchor points all around this object. Now what we can do is we can use these anchor points to specifically place this in places around the world. So I'm going to grab, notice that this object is selected. This is the wall that we have. I can come down and grab this little anchor point right here. And notice now when I move this around, it is only basically going in specific directions. It is snapping to a specific location and then snapping to a specific rotation. So previously when we weren't using snapping, it was basically just wherever you happen to put this, you put this. In snap mode, this allows us to sort of more explicitly define where this is going to be in the world, and it also sets us up to have those angles that we're looking for. So in this case, this is snapped to the floor. This is also snapped to the floor. I'll make this a little bit shorter. And so in this case now, this is perfectly connected here and perfectly connected here. So why are we doing this? Well, for one, this makes it a lot easier when we're building things to connect things and give walls right angles, make them look a lot more realistic. And another, when we're working with multiple objects, it allows us to more easily connect these. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to duplicate. I'm going to show you duplicate and then go back to some snapping again. Okay, so in this case, this is, remember, it started out as a cube. We resized it. It's now this big, like, rectangle thing. And we want to create another one of these, another wall. So we can create another wall. We can go into our menu. We can go to our cube. We can rebuild this again. Or, notice in this case, on our right stick, by default, it's up, which is grab. So we can click and grab on anything, right? Click and grab on this small point. If you click the stick to the right, this is called duplicate. And so what this is when you have duplicate on, when you click and drag an object, it creates a duplicate of that object. Okay? Now there's a couple ways to duplicate. One is similar to the click and select from earlier. You have duplicate selected, you click down with your trigger and drag through it, and then this object is selected, then you can click and drag out. Okay? Another one is, in that case, to undo, I just hit left on the left trigger. What was the next thing? Oh yeah, you can just put your cursor in it and then click and drag, and that will duplicate. So once again, to undo, hit left on that. Or similar to how we resized and moved earlier, we use these, arrows and stuff like that. You can also do that to duplicate. So I'm going to click and drag this, and what this will do is it will duplicate this and push it whichever direction I'm clicking and dragging. So click and drag here, and it duplicated a wall. Okay. There we go. So now we have two walls. And notice that you can just walk in between them. Okay. All right. So we have two walls. We want to finish this up. Okay. So we need these final two walls and then a roof. And then we might need to make a door. We'll see. So we need to make these side walls. Once again, we could open up a cube, but in this case, I'm going to just click and drag. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and take this anchor point here, and I'm going to come down and drag it and put it right against this anchor point down here. So what you'll notice is happening, notice I have snapping on. I come down and grab this anchor point, and I'm going to connect it to this anchor point. Notice if snapping is not on, when you go and click and drag this, it doesn't connect to anything, and it does the thing where you don't have a lot of control and you're kind of going to do your best. We don't want that. You turn snapping on, and you now have these objects, these corners that you can grab onto. So we're going to grab this, and we're going to connect it to this one. So grab this, come down, and it grabs right there. And notice that it creates this almost imperceptible seam, but yet it connects to the wall where we want it. Okay, so we have that wall. It's a little bit longer than we need. So there's a couple ways that we can play around with this. What I'm going to recommend, notice with snapping on, what I want to do is I want to resize this to be a little bit shorter. So what we can do is we can pick it up, we can try and make it a little bit shorter and redo that. I don't recommend that. What you want to do is you notice that the width is exactly like you like, the height is exactly like you like. It's just this distance that you want to make a little bit smaller. So what you can do is you can select this object and click and drag this square to close it. Okay, so to see that again, right, we want this to be a little bit thinner. So we're going to click down and drag through. So we select our wall. And then we're going to come here and we're going to resize it with this square. Right? So now we have 3 walls. We need one more for over here. We'll do it this way. So I'm going to duplicate this wall, right? Duplicate it, bring it over here. And we're going to bring this corner down and connect it to this corner. So this connects everything. Okay. So there we go. We now have a building. Doesn't have a roof, but ceiling. But yeah, let's do that. We're going to do another ceiling. So how are we going to do this? Let's start from scratch. Okay. So we want another cube. So we're in build mode. On our left stick, we're going to hit the Oculus button, which brings up our build menu. And in this case, I used a cube before. Maybe I'll use a pyramid. So in build mode, these are the primitive shapes you can choose from. Pretty much anything you can think of, you can build with some combination of these shapes. Notice where you have a pyramid, it's shaped obviously different than the square, but it has similar, notice it has these similar points. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down and drag this and connect this to this corner here. And then we're going to resize because we want to make this a little bit wider and a little bit broader. So while this pyramid is selected, we're going to select this resize tool and drag it over. Notice when you get to the edge, it'll give you this little green indicator saying that you're snapping or matching it up to the object that's around it. This makes it easy that, in this case, the roof object is going to come exactly to where this ends and no further. And then finally, we want to drag this across like this. And now we have a building with a roof. However, we run into an issue that we don't actually have a way to get inside this, right? So how can we do this? Well, one thing we can do is let's select this wall and say, okay, well, maybe this doesn't need to go all the way. Maybe we can bring this just like halfway, right? We'll see that again, that what we have here is we've got, notice there's a wall here, there's a wall here, a wall here, and a wall here, and then this roof. What we're going to do is we're going to click down and move our cursor through the object to select it. And then we're going to click and drag this and bring it back over to the middle. So you notice that all of these together make this one building, but they're all just individual pieces that come together to look like you want it to look. All right, so let's hop into preview mode. And here we are. We now have, it's a primitive house, right? But it's a house, right? It's a place where we can go inside and we can, maybe you can put a table and chairs in here. Maybe there's a key for another area. Or maybe this is just practice for getting used to building things. Okay. So that's that. We've gone into build mode. I guess as a recap, let's see. We opened up Horizon Worlds. We went to build mode. We created our first world. Actually, let's go ahead and finish this out. Okay. So right now, this is your world, right? A world where you can come and play around with this. Right now, only you have access to this because you built it. Okay. You can come in here anytime and you can add friends as collaborators and they can come in and see it, but no one else can see it right now. So last step we're going to do is we're going to publish this. And what publishing means is you can choose to make it available so that anyone on the platform on Horizon Worlds can come in and see this. And notice maybe for this primitive house, there's not going to be a lot of people to come and visit, but the process is going to be exactly the same. You come in, you build some things, you build some interactions, and then you make it go live. And, maybe you make it go live before it's absolutely ready, but that can be great to get people out and interacting with it and see are there things that you need to change and update. And by being able to sort of make this live pretty immediately and then to go in and make changes pretty immediately that can then go back out to the users pretty immediately, that is really, really powerful. And honestly, I think a part of Horizon Worlds that a lot of people aren't thinking about is just the amount of creativity that this allows you to have with such a small amount of things. All right, publishing. So how to do this? you want to be in build mode. So we're in preview mode now. We're going to click down on the right stick to go into build mode. And we're going to open our build mode menu. So our left stick, our left controller, we hit the Oculus button. And that brings up our menu. So there's a bunch of things here. We're just going to go down to this world one. So here under world, you click that. Now, there's a couple of things here. This is ultimately where you're going to choose to quote unquote publish it. So you have the name, which is what it was just picked. We'll leave that as it is. Description, we'll just say visit a house. I acknowledge that I've read. Content is open for everyone. Comfort rating, in this case, it's pretty comfortable. Tags, we're just going to call it adventure. And so here's where you have the ability to customize your world. You can change a different name. You can put a longer description. You can put specific tags. You can choose a thumbnail image. Right now, by default, it's just this. But you could take a picture in Horizon Worlds, take a picture of your house and put that here as the thumbnail image. Actually, let's do that. We'll do this all the way. So let's go back to preview mode. And I'm going to open up, if you look down at your wrist, you're going to open up your wristwatch menu and click on this little picture. And what we're going to do, I'm going to turn this into a photo, turn it around. And I'm just going to take a picture of this. And actually, one thing that I enjoy doing is using the tools at my disposal to help with my, sharing of information. So real quick, we're going to hop back into build mode. We're going to hit our build menu with the left Oculus. We're going to go back over to build, and we're going to go to gizmos. There's a lot of stuff here. I'll go over these later, but right now we're just going to take a text gizmo out. What a text gizmo does is it allows you to just display text somewhere. Okay, so we haven't done this before. We haven't worked with property panels or anything like that. So I'm not going to go into this. I'm just going to show you how to do it so we can make this work. So right here is an object that's called a text object. What we're going to do is we're going to highlight it, as we've done. Notice it's highlighted. And then when our cursor is inside this object, notice we now have a thing that says properties. If we press up on the right stick, it opens up the properties panel. We're going to be dealing with these a lot later on, but we're not interested in that right now. All that we're interested in right now, in this box that says text, we're going to type in my first world. Okay. Under attributes, we're going to change all of these to 0. Just so that's black. And then we can close this. Okay. So notice what we have here is just some text that says my first world. Notice when you put your cursor through it, you can pick and move it sort of like you can the objects, which is also another strength of this, is that the objects you're working with are all sort of treated similarly. And so what we can do is a similar thing. We can just take this object, maybe we make it a little bit smaller. And then we click, these anchor points and we drag it here. So here is, I'll make it a little bit smaller. My first world, and we put it here. Okay. So there we go. We now have a billboard for my first world. And then what we came here for was to take a picture. So open up our wrist menu, open up the picture, turn it around, and then change this to picture. My first world. We took a picture. Okay. Go back to build mode. We're in preview mode on the right stick. Click down on the right stick to open up build mode. In build mode, click the left Oculus button to bring up the Horizon Worlds build menu. At the bottom, go down to the World tab. Make sure your name is correct. Make sure your description is correct. Make sure your content rating, who it's limited to, everyone, comfort rating is comfortable, tags adventure, thumbnail image, select from your photos. We're going to select this one. We're going to say it's visible to the public, which means anyone can view it, and whether or not it's a beta world. So this is sort of a tech term for saying, hey, this thing that I'm letting you play around with isn't finalized yet. It's basically saying there's still some work to do, but we're going to let you play around with it. So I'd highly recommend at the beginning, at least, putting this on. There's no like official things. I don't think that it does, but it does let people know, like, when they're coming into your world, if it's not complete, maybe there's some more stuff that they need to do. So once you have everything here filled out, all you're going to do is you're going to click this publish button. There's a publishing notice about publishing all this stuff. Feel free to read it. Agree. And then it'll take a second. Publishing now. Your world has been published. If you want to share it, you can share it to Facebook and stuff. I'm just going to hit cancel. Okay, so what does this mean? So we now have a world where right now we're in build mode, right? In preview mode, we can come in, we can jump around, we can do all this stuff, right? We can hang out, we can go into build mode, we can make changes and all this. But what we're interested in is now we want to view this world that anyone can view. Okay, so go back to preview mode. And what we're going to do is we're going to open up the Horizon Worlds menu. So click left on the Oculus button. It's going to bring up this, which shows sort of the main splash image for your world. We're going to go back and notice here is your first world. So there's a couple ways to actually view it. If you come to worlds and you click on search and search my first world. And yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. A lot of people's first worlds. But here's my first world, right? What we can do is you can click on visit world and that will take you to an open instance of that. So when you're in it, anyone else can join you too. So you could be in here with 15 other random people. What I like to do, especially when I'm practicing and just seeing how stuff works, if you click on this little I button here, it brings up the world page. And actually this is right. So it brings up the world page. If you click these little three dots, you can launch a closed instance. And so this is only you is going to be in it and anyone you happen to invite. If you launch an open instance, then anyone can access it. But closed, it's just you. And hopefully it will work. If you don't want to go through this publishing and all of that, you can also choose preview world, which takes the current state of your world and allows you to see what it would look like if it was live. It doesn't require you basically making updates. Launching a closed instance isn't working for some reason. Let me try something else. We go to publish world page. Maybe because I'm stuck in here. It's not working for some reason. Let's see if I can go into another one. Okay. Sometimes it seems like right after you publish, there needs to be a little bit of time before you can actually go in and see the updates. Okay. So in this case, what I did was just I went to another world of mine to hopefully give it a second to update that I actually made a world, and then we're going to try it again. So we go back to the world page and launch a closed instance. Okay, there we go. And here we are. So this is my first world. It's not my first world, but right? So literally you can take this link and share it with your friends and they can come in and hang out in here with you. Right? Now obviously this is just a house that has some text on it. But this is the beginning of something, right? This is the beginning of, you could see this is the beginning of a city. Maybe this is the beginning of a castle. Maybe this is the beginning of just like an island where there's just one house and it's all quiet and serene, right? This is the beginning. Pretty much everything that you can build can be built with these sort of primitive objects. So feel free to come into build mode and play around with some of the things that we talked about today. Just as a recap of what all that we covered, we started off with assuming that you have a headset that has Horizon Worlds and you have Horizon Worlds downloaded and updated. We hopped in and created our first world. We hopped into build mode where we learned a little bit about preview mode versus build mode and sort of the power of having those so easily accessible, the ability to really quickly iterate on your ideas. And the idea behind that is you can build something and you can hop in and immediately test it out and see if it's fun. And if it's not, you can change it. And if it is, then you can hop on to the next thing. So, taking time to practice that switching between preview mode and build mode is going to be important because that's going to be where a lot of your creative time gets spent, is in sort of doing those little experiments. Okay. So we played around with build mode. We hopped in and played around with snapping and duplicating. Snapping allows us to basically connect these objects to each other in a way that makes it pretty much seamless. Duplicating makes it really easy to say, I want this wall, I want it to be over there. Instead of creating a whole new object, we can just click on this and drag it over there. Right? So these are all tools in this that makes it really easy to do the work that you need to do. Okay. We did an example of creating some text, right? We used a gizmo that I'll talk a little bit more in depth at a later time. But this was pretty much, hey, we're going to make a text. We're going to make some text and put it here. And then we took a picture and we published our world. So this is now something that you could share a link with your friends and they can come take a look. Now, what I'm hoping the next steps from this will be, right? So this is my first world, and hopefully after you've followed through this, you have a similar thing, right? Maybe it doesn't look exactly like this. Maybe it's some different colors, some different sizes, some different heights, but hopefully you've got something that's set up sort of like this. And so what my next steps are going to be is create a series of videos that's going to help you flesh this world out. So I'm going to give you some tools and some steps to follow, sort of like some blueprints that you then follow to flesh this out. So a couple of the things I have in mind, we're going to delve a little bit into scripting. So right now, the way that this world is set up is it's pretty much a blank world. Nothing is really, like literally the game made this platform for us to stand on. So if I jump off here, ideally what would happen, right, is I would respawn because I fell down and I couldn't get back. But that's not a thing now. This game doesn't know to do that. So that's where scripting comes in. It's going to be me telling the computer, I want you to do this. So that's what we're going to walk through. I'm going to walk through how to create a respawn script, right? If someone comes in here and they jump off the edge for whatever reason, that they're not just stuck down in the blue beyond, that they get respawned back up here so they can continue playing with their friends. Okay, so I'm going to do a respawn script, and we're going to talk a little bit about best practices with writing scripts and naming scripts, and we're actually going to go through some examples of how to create some dynamic interactions. So I'll do the respawn script. I think I'll probably try and do a door script. Doors are in games are notoriously difficult because, I mean, literally everything in a game is you telling the computer to do this thing. So the computer doesn't have a concept of what a door is. We need to tell the computer how to simulate what opening a door looks like. So I'll talk a little bit about some different types of doors. So we can have a room in here that we can't get to unless there's a door that opens, right? So these are all somewhat straightforward processes, but everything that we learn here is stuff that can be extrapolated out and beyond. All of the stuff that we build in here is stuff that you can come in and play around with and snap together and resize. And all the dynamic stuff that we learn, all of the scripting, is just instructions that we're sending to the computer to do stuff that we want it to do. So the only thing that is preventing you from making immersive worlds is your imagination. Anything that you think of, you can build. Thanks for hanging out with me today. This was fun. Hopefully this was fun for you. My objective is to really try and give as many people that want it an introduction to creating dynamic worlds. I want to give people the tools to hop in and make whatever they want. And a lot of times that starts with making something that is straightforward, but it gives you something to go off of, right? Pick something that you've interacted with before. Pick a game that you enjoyed or an interaction that you've had and try and make it in here. I've had a lot of fun just making like interactive gizmos and gadgets, right? I made a compass that when you hold it up, it shows you the direction of the object that you're looking for. You can make whatever you want. So that's that. Once again, thank you all for hanging out with me today. If there's things that you would like to see added to this, please let me know. Like I said, I'm going to try and take it a little bit slow. If I need to go a little bit slower, please let me know. I'm happy to go into depth about more of the decisions. I think I can probably go kind of fast. So if there's anything that you'd like to see, anything additional, any feedback, anything that you in particular would like to see in your world that's like this, I'm open to suggestions. Like I said, I've got a couple ideas, the respawn and the door, and maybe we can do some animated coins or something like that. But really this is where it all starts, right? Every time you build whatever you want with the Legos, it starts the same way. Okay, let's build a structure that I know. Let's build a tower, right? Let's build a house. And that's the cool thing about this is like the opportunities are endless, right? One of the worlds that I made was based off of a castle. I literally went and looked up what are the common dimensions of a castle. And I made, it ended up being a little bit smaller, but that's what this was based off of. There's creative ideas anywhere. And this is a really fun, engaging way to get to play around with that. So thanks everyone. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you have a fun time in Horizon Worlds. And come along, come play with me. Come build with me. There's a lot of benefits that come from this aside from just I get to create a VR space. There's a lot of learning. You can learn about computer science. You can learn about software design. You can learn about user experience design. You can learn about coding. You can learn about social interactions. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do, and this is just a wonderful playground for that to happen. So thank you, everyone. This has been Sedka, and I'm signing off.